Hello and welcome back to Strength for Tomorrow Radio with me, Stuart Thompson, your host. It is episode 84 of our podcast, and today we are thinking about factors that are going to influence your progress, key factors on influencing your progress. So the whole point of training is to make progress, right? At least that's our presupposition. We start with that expectation whenever a client comes to us. You have a problem regarding your body or your health and you want help fixing it. Now, that's the unspoken truth involved in the client coaching relationship. Many of you don't even know maybe what you specifically need help with at the start, but you want to make a change. As your coaches, we want to see you meet your goals, the long-term, short-term, medium-term goals. Whatever it is you have in your head, we'll help you define what is realistic and what is not realistic. We want every session to bring you one step closer to these goals. We assume that you, our clients, maybe also want that. Is that too much to expect? We try to ensure that your goals and our coaching align as best as possible. And we do this by offering you goal review calls once every month. Now, not everybody does that. Not every coaching setup does that, but we've found great value in it because it helps just bring us back together to make sure that we're both on the same page and that I'm not going this way and you're going the other way, to make sure we're all heading the same direction. It's a great chance to catch up. It's a great chance to maybe address any concerns you might have about your progress, about your training program, about the direction of things. We can review your progress over the last month. We can look ahead to the next training block and bring accountability essentially to ensure that we're both doing the best that we can to make your goals a reality. But what exactly drives progress? There are lots of key factors that will influence your progress regardless of your goal. And regardless of your goal, the biggest determinant of whether you make progress or not, I would say, is consistency. Consistency in a variety of key areas. It might be more helpful to think of this in terms of barriers to your consistency in these areas. So first of all, training. Whenever it comes to training, consistency is obviously really, really important. Even subpar programs, really not very well designed programs, not like our world-class ones, they will sometimes work surprisingly well for complete novices. If you've never done weights before, if you've never been to the gym before, then this will work surprisingly well, at least for a couple of weeks, if you're consistent. But if you have an appropriate program for your current level, combined with consistent training, you'll see a really, really remarkable amount of progress in a shockingly short space of time. Consistency really matters with regards to training, frequency of sessions, using whatever load you're using, volume of work, intensity of work, exercise selection, range of motion, technique. Consistency across these aspects is so important to one degree or another. A very simple example is if your program requires you to perform 3 training sessions per week and you only do 1 or 2, or you miss 1 week in 4, say you just take 1 week off every month, those will all negatively impact your rate of progress and even stall your progress completely as you become more advanced. Okay, you can get away with that a little bit at the start because any stimulus is going to be better than no stimulus, right? So if you just go straight off the couch and then suddenly you're just moving your arms with a little bit of loading, you're going to get some sort of a benefit from it, even if it's not optimal. But what we try to do here is we try to not waste your time. We try to maximize your time to give you maximum value, to do the things that would bring you maximum benefit. Another simple example would be if you're performing the bench press and you have been taking 4 or 5 kilogram jumps in between sessions. This is too much, and the increase in load will not match the level of adaptation you acquire. Apart from possibly your first 2 or 3 sessions, we're still figuring out where you're at. We're not going to top end you. We're not going to put you up to the maximum you can tolerate at that stage. We're going to figure out and make sure that your tempo is correct, that your control is there, that you have the technique, and you're doing all the breathing properly. You've got your shoulder blades in a nice position, all that sort of thing. But imagine you have been utilizing a different range of motion in every session. Instead of bringing the bar all the way down to touch your chest on every rep, you stop 1 or 2 inches above your chest each time. Then you go lower the next session, you bring it down and bump it off the chest with more weight, or you bounce it off your chest as some people do. They use your ribcage as a trampoline, which is never a good idea. You'll get stuck under the bar before long, or you won't be able to improve upon the weight and you'll seemingly plateau and you go, oh, well, I guess I'm not very strong. And that happens so often. I see it so often. We have people come in here with that expectation and that previous experience. Training consistency is a crucial matter, and ignoring it is such a big mistake. You might get away with it for a while, but sooner or later, the gain train will come to a grinding halt. Unless you are aware of the reasons, you'll be left scratching your head. You'll be wondering what's going on. We'll touch more on that a little bit later and get into a little bit more specific detail about it. But another area that is really important when it comes to progress and consistency to make that progress happen is recovery and nutrition. This is perhaps the most difficult area to maintain consistency in, nutrition and recovery. Remember, you don't get stronger or fitter in the gym. Did you know that? Bit of a newsflash maybe for some of you, but you get stronger or fitter if you recover from the work that you do in the gym. This includes the rest time between sessions. It includes dealing with stress. If you have a lot going on at home, if you have a lot going on at work, if there's things going on out of the ordinary that are adding stress to your mind, that will tire you out mentally as well as physically perhaps. And also making sure you're getting enough sleep. That's recovery. That's a recovery issue, and getting quality sleep at that. This is a difficult one if you're a parent with young kids or you're a shift worker. It's not easy. It's a challenge. I get it. But there are ways around it. There are ways to mitigate it. There are ways to deal with it. Even if it's not the ideal solution, even if it doesn't actually, the result isn't that you get more hours of sleep, but you can actually increase the quality, the density of your sleep. And there are solutions to mitigate those problems. We dealt with that in a previous podcast episode. Look back and you will be able to find it. I don't have the number to hand, but do listen to that episode. There's a lot more detail on it. But to give you a bit of a fast forward, a really good way to think about it is, what's your caffeine like? So what are you doing during the time that you're awake to make your sleep as high quality as possible? So if you're drinking caffeine, coffee, energy drinks all day long, you're drinking lots of liquid before you go to bed, all those things are going to interrupt your sleep, they're going to disrupt your sleep, and they're going to lead to poorer quality sleep. Drinking alcohol before bed as well is another one. So simple things, trying to make sure the conditions are correct in your room. So you've got a clean bed, you've got a cool room, you've got maybe even white noise if necessary to try and give you the best possible scenario. So even if you only get 4 hours sleep, it's better than perhaps some people that get 6 hours sleep with poor sleep and conditions and quality, because you're going to get into REM quicker and you're going to recover and benefit from it a lot more. What about eating enough calories? Eating enough quality calories, I should say. Whenever I tell clients to eat more, I don't mean McDonald's, I don't mean pot noodles, I mean quality calories, like real food. Eggs, steak, fish, chicken, turkey, potatoes, sweet potatoes, vegetables. I'm sure you can think of lots of other quality sources of food that you need, and try not to think of the ones that you don't need, okay? All the junk stuff, refined carbohydrates, processed, ultra-processed junk. What about protein? Are you consuming enough protein? And before you say yes, I need to clarify something. 1 egg for breakfast is not enough protein for anyone other than maybe a child that's about under 5 years old. If that's not you, and why would it be? Why would you be listening to this right now? Then you need to eat more. You need to eat more eggs if you're into eggs. There are about 6 to 7 grams of protein per egg. Okay? You need anywhere between 25 to 45, maybe even more grams of protein per meal, per sitting. It's obviously depend on your size and your weight and training and stuff like that, but you need to do the same at lunch, and then dinner you need to do the same again, and for snacks you need to do the same again. Do you get the idea? So no, in short, you probably aren't eating enough protein. But before you have the audacity to lie to me and yourself, what would your parents think? What would they think? Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough minerals in? A lack of hydration can really impact your training and therefore your progress. Whenever it comes to things like deadlifting, there's actually a thing called lifter's headache, and I've experienced this before myself, where you will generate a headache. You'll develop a headache because you didn't drink enough water. Perhaps you're a little bit stressed out in your neck as well. There's other reasons as well, but you can mitigate that by drinking enough water. That's a common technique to try and stop that from happening. What about community and your social environment? There are social and community factors that will influence your progress, whether it's for the good or whether it is for the bad. For example, If you're training in a gym that isn't friendly, it's hostile, there's a weird vibe, everyone ignores you or don't speak to you, it's not welcoming or friendly, most people won't like that environment, and that is another barrier to you making progress. Why? Because you're going to be less likely to want to go back to it. You're going to be less likely to drag yourself out on a cold night and go and train in it if everyone's a bit miserable. If your training partner or coach is negative all the time, or you get bullied by the people in the gym to some extent, you get made fun of, you get demeaned, you get judged, you get stared at, or whatever other nasty, negative, counterproductive scenario you can think of, if any of that is in play, you're going to be more reluctant to want to return, and your consistency and progress will suffer. If you have people around you who talk you into maybe staying up late, I'm not talking the gym now, I'm talking maybe your friend group, or in the gym as well, but if you have friends or family who are talking you into staying up later, drinking alcohol, eating crap, not properly taking care of yourself, it's really difficult to push back against that whenever that pressure is there. It's really difficult to overcome that, especially if you've got a spouse or friend group who are just colleagues who are just kind of always encouraging you to drink alcohol at every turn, to eat junk at every turn. It's really difficult to push back against that. So you need a solid support crew around you to help you better yourself in and out of the gym. For example, you don't need people around you that are going to help you do worse instead of better. You want people around you who will encourage you to help old ladies across the street, or will help your neighbour move furniture, or stop to help someone in need with a flat tire or something, change a wheel. Not people who will encourage you to, take advantage of other people or develop bad character traits, to be lazy, to be, just not a positive contribution to society, but who will help you develop it. The same goes for a gym environment. You want people who are going to encourage you to eat better, to sleep better, to go to bed earlier, to avoid alcohol, to train more consistently, to turn up when you don't want to turn up. Not the opposite effect that is going to sabotage you, right? If you've got a nice, friendly, supportive community around you, like we have here at Cross Functional Fitness, you'll be more likely to want to turn up to train just to have the crack and see everybody. Even when you don't want to train, this will be another factor. It'll be a pulling factor to pull you into the gym and to get you back into training and doing what needs to be done. People will miss seeing you. People will ask about you. They ask me about you whenever you're not here. They care about you. They care about your progress. They care about your well-being overall, and they want to see you again and to engage with you and to develop some sort of a relationship with you. And you get out of it what you put in. If you give encouragement, you're more likely to get encouragement. If you're friendly to others, others will be friendly to you. They'll approach you, and that's kind of the way it goes, right? That's just life. It's like a life lesson here. If you have a support network around you that is going to pull you up and pull you along, you're going to be more likely to stick at it long enough to see and feel progress being made. And that is so important. I can't stress that enough. That kind of goes hand in hand with the training. That is really important. Education. So I don't mean school. I don't mean university. There are educational factors at play when it comes to progress. What I mean by that is there's so much nonsense out there. Nonsense. It drives me mad. So much stuff that's either patently false, not optimal, misleading, or it's a scam. You might believe these things, which will then misinform you when it comes to your training and your progress. The other thing is, what's true for other people might not be true for you. What is written in Men's Health might not apply to you. What's true for an intermediate or an advanced trainee, is that the word, is not necessarily true for a novice. So that's important to bear in mind. But if you believe these things, then that misinform you, then you're going to be stagnant when it comes to your progress. It's going to set you up for failure. If you believe a lot of the ads which are done with Photoshop, you think that everybody can drop 50 pounds of fat in a couple of weeks, get an amazing wax and a tan and look happy and get great lighting and build 20 pounds of muscle in a couple of weeks. You think that's just the norm whenever you start training. This is going to make your training seem really slow, really pointless, really demoralizing, and you're going to be more likely to miss sessions in or give up entirely. And ultimately, your progress is going to develop if you stop, right? That's kind of that should be obvious. It should be obvious. If you stop training altogether, your progress doesn't go anywhere. You go backwards, if anything. Even if your progress is going slow, it's better than not going at all. The old premise of use it or lose it does apply. And as we get older, we lose more. Not weight. Progress, I mean. Physicality. But If you can't remember your original goals, that's another problem. If you start your training and you're thinking, I want to get really lean, and then you get your head turned to think, oh no, I want to bulk up, or then you think, I really want to just improve my bone density, and then you go, oh no, wait, I actually want to look really good in the bikini. Like, if you're completely changing your goals, or you can't remember what your initial goal was, your main focus, your main thing, it's not to say there's not, goals can kind of overlap and correlate together, but if you are constantly changing your goals and your mindset and want to switch up programs, program hopping is what we call it, then you're going to get frustrated. You're not going to see any long-term progress. People, I promise you, people who program hop see the least progress. And maybe you think the only way to see progress is by stepping on the scales. This is a problem. This is a big problem. The scales will only tell you about how your body interacts with gravity. That's it. That's all. Now, it's still helpful. It's a useful metric. It's not the only important metric, but it is useful. It doesn't determine what kind of weight you have put on or weight you've lost, but when you discover that there are other better ways to evaluate progress, you'll be more likely to be consistent with your training. You'll want to learn more about what you're actually embarking on and why you're training the way you are, why you need to eat the way that you're supposed to eat. When you learn, when you develop your own education around these things, then the scale weight you'll understand that the scale weight will indicate fat loss, potentially muscle loss, potentially weight loss, potentially glycogen loss, or a mixture, or an increase. You'll not get so emotionally attached to the number that it produces then. Whenever you measure other areas like waist circumference, fitness increases that are demonstrable, you can actually look and see it. Strength increases, seeing the weight on the bar going up, your depth, your range of motion, your mobility, you have a better mood, you're less tired, more energy, your clothes fit better, you get compliments from people, or people who are around you will comment, friends and family who want the best for you. These are all data points to some extent. It's qualitative. Quantitative is important, but there's qualitative as well, and they fit together nicely, and they are much more important because it's a fuller data set then. They're much more important than the scale weight on its own. Hopefully that is clear. So strength training and cardio training, HIIT training, they're important when it comes to progress for most people. And we're talking about general populations here. We're not talking about elite athletes. We're not talking about somebody who's a very advanced power lifter or something. We're talking about having a combination. If you're consistent with your strength training, you'll progress faster. It should be obvious. It shouldn't need to be said, but it is worth pointing out and to demonstrate why. If you do consistent strength training, then you are going to not be messing about with different exercises all the time. So one week you're doing chin-ups, the next week you're doing pull-ups, the next week you're doing muscle-ups, the next week or next session. If you're doing that all the time and you have no regularity or familiarity or consistency with it, it's really hard to see any sort of progression. If you're doing pull-ups, for example, you want to make sure that you're adding an extra rep each time. Okay, not every set, but across the sets at least. Or adding weight. Do a weighted pull-up. Okay, whatever it is, you want to have some sort of a measurement of whereby you can actually see progress and look back in the last session and see where you were and where you're going to go. That's going to determine the next session, right? You need to have some sort of consistency. And if you're always messing about with things like rep schemes, and one week you're doing 12s, the next week you're doing 20s, the next week you're doing 3s, next week you're doing 5s, it's really hard to see progress. You need, for a substantial block at least, I would say at least 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, at least a substantial block to see how that goes and to see a progression there. Then I'm not going to say it's pointless, but it's really frustrating. It will get frustrating because you're going to be tricking yourself, and there's no nice clear pathway for you to actually stick to it. If you know that you did 4 last week and you go into the gym going, oh, I'm going to do 5, next week I'm going to get 5. Brilliant. That's great. But if you're always messing about with it, your progress is going to be slower and you're going to be more likely to stop before too long. Sessions are an absolute killer for progress. You might get away with maybe staying the same for a while, but you won't progress much, if at all. Even when you do increase the weight in the bar, you'll struggle more than you'll need to. You can't take very big jumps in weight between sessions, and this will start to demoralize you most likely. If you're only able to get 1 bench press session in per week and you're supposed to get 3 in because your program says so, then guess what? You're going to be struggling to go up in weight at the rate you should be going up. For example, if you're taking 1 kilogram jumps in the bench press, you miss a week, you're probably not going to be able to go up the next time. You'll stay the same, because there's a practice element as well as a strength development element from that stress recovery adaptation process that we're talking an awful lot about on this podcast. You'll stay the same. This starts to get frustrating because you don't see any progress. You'll be less inclined to do your next session. You'll be even less motivated if that's what you're relying on to do your next one. And then it's a slippery slope. You get into the habit of missing sessions, getting frustrated, and then you give up. Sadly, that's what happens. Whereas you could do 2 to 3 bench press sessions a week and you go up 2 or 3 kilos, which will keep the wheels moving and the progress rolling, right? If you're consistent with your strength training, the cardio becomes easier, you eat better, you move better, your metabolism runs better as well. If you get really good at deadlifting or squatting, guess what? The bike gets a little bit easier. Every effort, every revolution, every stroke on the rower, every stride you take when you're running gets a little bit easier, providing you're not eating like an idiot. But it gets easier because it gets more and more sub-maximal. Now, if you're going to run a marathon, you need to do marathon training. But my point is that moving your body gets easier the stronger you are. Couldn't be more clear, okay? It opens the door to other physical endeavors as well. It allows you to progress and to proceed with other types of training you maybe never even thought possible. So someone gets their deadlift up, they lose a bit of weight, suddenly pull-ups are within their remit. They're able to actually do pull-ups because it's in the realms of possibility now because they've dropped their body weight, they've increased their strength, they've developed all the pulling muscles that you need for doing a pull-up. You develop your core, develop your upper back, develop your lats, develop your biceps. Also, it builds muscle. It firms you, it tones you. Various areas of your body get harder and denser, like your shoulders, like your arms, like your legs, like your hips, like your core. Your body composition will change for the better if you're consistent, not to mention performance improvements, all assuming you're recovering properly through proper sleep and nutrition. So for example, if a guy weighs 100 kilos and he has a 40-inch waist, if he tries to get that waist down, not focusing too much on the scale weight, but increases his lifts, stays at around 95 kilos, he gets his waist down to about 34. He's in dramatically different shape. His strength levels have gone up here. He's built muscle. He's lost fat. His body composition goes from like this shape to triangular shape, right? Excuse me with my hand gestures. Looks like I'm doing the YMCA here. Hopefully that's clear. Next one then, HIIT cardio. So you're going to use them interchangeably. I recognize there is a difference significantly, but for the purposes of this, I'm going to combine the two because the same sort of principles apply. If you're consistent and you're hitting your cardio, it improves your baseline aerobic fitness, it improves your top end aerobic fitness as well, your max efforts. This helps your recovery between strength training, heavy sets. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty of zone 2, zone 3, zone 4, zone 5. Okay? You can discuss that and we can do a separate show on that. But if you're putting in any work in those areas, it will allow your metabolism to express itself better. It'll help your recovery easier, as I said, between sets whenever you're doing heavy weightlifting. And you're going to feel better as well. There's going to be a good release of endorphins for that as well, providing you're not overdoing it and under recovering. But if you start missing sessions, it can start to feel a lot more difficult. You need to be consistent in the measurement of your aerobic fitness as well, so you can track your progress over time. A great example is if someone goes to a spin class and they've been doing it for 6 weeks and then they miss 2 weeks, right? And then they go back into the first one and they're like, that was so difficult. I am so unfit now. I've lost all my fitness. The truth of the matter is you don't know, right? You don't know because you didn't have anything to measure it by. What were you using to measure it? You're just more tired afterwards. Now, there's a few things could be the reason for that. One, maybe you didn't sleep very well the night before. 2, maybe you put on a bit of weight. Okay, fair enough. Maybe that is into your fitness. The other option is you just expended yourself a lot more this time, right? Maybe you haven't lost that much fitness, but you just expended yourself and you went really hard at it. Okay, unless you've got some way of measuring it. Did you get faster? Did you get slower? Were you doing a time trial? Were you doing 1,000 meters? Were you doing 2,000 meters? What were you doing that you can say you have significantly lost fitness, right? If you don't measure it, you can't make improvements, okay? So what can be a barrier to this type of training is if you miss a session, your aerobic output can go down quite fast. It can do. I'm talking about if you have been doing it for a relatively short period of time. Your strength you'll hold on to it a little bit longer, but your cardio will go down a little bit quicker. It takes a long time to build strength, but it stays with you longer. Cardio, as we say, you can build it up pretty quick, but it'll drop off pretty quick as well, unless you've been doing it for like a lifetime or you've got a really good natural level of VO2 max. Your aerobic output stays up there with relatively little effort. Now, if you get a niggle in your hip, your knee, or anywhere in your lower body from overuse, poor technique, or just bad habits built up over months and years, it can be really difficult to do, because the fact is most cardio and HIIT is leg dominant, right? You think all the big cardio exercises, apart from the ski erg, maybe, and a bit of boxing if you want to count those, there's most of them are leg dominant, and this can be frustrating. Rather than trying to work around it until it heals, it can put you off. It can put a lot of people off, and they just don't bother doing anything at all. So then your fitness actually does take a nosedive, and then you put on weight, your metabolism isn't going the same, your mindset isn't as good, so you're going to eat more junk, right? It all is related. But I think that's plenty of factors. These are probably a few more. There are probably a few more factors that will impact your training that I've left out, but overall it comes down to consistency in all of these areas. Trying to be consistent, trying to have a measurement of whatever you're trying to do, and being consistent. Consistency matters the most. Even a bad program, like we said at the start, can be semi-useful if you do it consistently, especially if you're a novice, if you're just starting off. It's not like an eye operation, right? It's not like you go in for surgery, you couldn't see, you go in for surgery and you come out and your life has changed right after one operation. It takes many sessions. It takes several weeks. It takes months. It even takes years for some people, depending on where your starting point is. It takes this time to see progress and to make big changes, both in the gym and out of the gym when it comes to your nutrition. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise, okay? Don't just ignore the adverts if they're trying to tell you that. But it's that consistency over time that really makes the difference. Rather than being on it for 8 weeks in the year, eating well, cutting out junk, training 5 or 6 days a week, it makes much more sense. And you'll be able to make far better progress if you train about 3 times per week, eat as best you can for the long term, and prioritize sleep. So if your progress is stopped, stalled, or stagnated, drop us a message. We would love to help you get back on track. We have coaches who would love to work with you and help you overcome these barriers and challenges, and to help you be more consistent in the long term. That's about it. That is a wrap. And don't forget, you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram. We have an email as well. If you're in the Warrenpoint or Strevor area and you would like to get some training in, we would love to chat to you. So remember to train today so you can be stronger tomorrow.